So let's move to the last section of our discussion today and talk a little bit about how can we improve change and configuration management processes. So when we asked this question as part of our research, 61% of respondents, the number one answer was better use of technology, followed by greater cross-functional team collaboration and organizational culture changes to support closed-loop processes. Stronger executive management support was also very important. But again, when we looked at innovators versus laggards, even in this area, you can see very marked differences between the ways in which each of these groups sees how they can improve their processes. When you looked at innovators, organizational culture plays a key role, and greater cross-functional collaboration, both with 80%. Compared to laggards, where the top issues are around better use of technology and stronger support from executive management. Those issues that are most important to laggards are least important to innovators. And that led us to think about the fact that perhaps innovators already have the technology and they've been able to implement them in the right way. Obviously, they have a closed-loop process, so they have a technology platform that enables them to make that happen. And there's a significant difference. Management support wasn't a problem for any of our innovators. So again, to tie into what we talked a little bit earlier, it further supports the fact that in order to improve the processes, we need to close the loop. We need to use technology the right way, but we also need to have the right culture and the right environment to make that happen. So another key area tied into this is why don't we make changes? When we ask what are the top barriers to product modifications, you can see its marked difference. The top answer were lack of resources and regulatory, the need to refile for those laggards. Not a single innovator said that the regulatory process was a barrier. In fact, innovators are focusing on the right things. They're looking at what are the costs. What is this going to cost me, and what's the ROI that I'm going to get out of making this change, this improvement to that process? They're looking at disruptions to the business. They're looking at collaboration and the resources and manufacturing. Whereas laggards are looking at, I don't have enough resources, I'm worried about the regulatory process, and I don't have enough collaboration. Only 56% said that they're looking at cost as a barrier for making changes. And this is further supported when we asked about the financial impact of making changes. Those who have a closed-loop process, those innovators, 80% of them rank themselves as above average when it comes to evaluating the financial impact of changes. And most medical device companies that I know are for-profit organizations. So I think that the financial impact of a change would be a very important thing to know. On the other hand, only 9% of laggards said that they have an above-average rating when it comes to evaluating the financial impact, with 45% self-describing as having a poor rating as it relates to this category, and 36% saying that they're below average. So obviously, being able to identify what is the business value is important. So as the final question in our roundtable, Bill, what do you see as the value of closed-loop systems, and what can we do to move in the right direction?
There's a military term that is used, and because our head quality guy here is a military guy, we use the term a lot. It's called after-action review. it's lessons learned. It's about understanding what the consequences are of our decisions previously coming back to work with us. And I think that in a very small sense is the real value of a closed loop system. Is are you willing as an organization to learn from the decisions and the actions you've taken? And some of those are not necessarily, it's not all about learning from your mistakes. It's about learning from your successes, and how can you incorporate those learnings back into what you do going forward. And so to me, the value of any closed loop system is huge. If you're not willing to look at history, you are, I don't even know what the phrase is, but you're destined to repeat. Yeah, you're destined to repeat the history. And in some cases, you want to do that. You want to do what you've done well in the past, and you want to avoid or try to prevent or minimize the impact of things that were not the right things. So to me, that's the whole value.
Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein is that if you always do what you've always done, then you always get what you've always gotten. And often we're surprised, how come we're still having issues? Well, because we're doing the same things we've been doing for the last 15, 20 years, or this is how Joe set it up, or Jane, why? Why did Jane do it this way? I don't know, but that's how we do it.
Yeah.
Ugo, what's your take on the value of closed-loop systems?
Yeah, I would add to that I think the closed-loop systems help us move towards a proactive mindset and getting through data-driven decisions. They really help provide focus and ensure that the changes we're making, the actions we're taking are getting us the desired results. That analysis of the data in that closed-loop system is really important to identifying the key drivers of improvement, and this is what really starts helping us prioritize the work to make sure we're working on the things that are going to give us the highest impact for the organization, the quality and the product improvements that we need.
Excellent. So what we'd like to do now is just wrap up with one slide that highlights the differences, the two sides of our industry, those who are innovators or have a closed-loop process on the left, and those who are laggards or have an open-loop process on the right. And you can see the marked differences. The question is, which side would you rather be in? So hopefully this presentation and this discussion has been helpful. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Sandra so that we can open the lines for Q&A and get our audience questions.
Okay. Yes, and just real quickly, this research did result in a total of 5 white papers. The link is available here on the slide. The research is complimentary for life science and healthcare industry professionals. You can send an email to research@axendia.com. If you're on the line as a technology or service provider, please feel free to reach out to info@axendia.com, and we will be in touch with you regarding the 5 white papers in the series. All right, okay, so the first question is, what types of barriers to investment and quality system improvements and the tools needed to establish a closed loop system have you experienced?
Take that one. That's a great question, and I think one of the biggest ones I've seen, I think we put a statistic there about the innovators having a really good handle on the cost of changes. What I would add to that is that I think they not only have a great handle on the cost, but on the full picture of investing in these process improvements or systems that can help drive the organizations to where we want to get. They really understand, I think, the cost of quality and even the opportunity costs of being in an inefficient system, like having a paper-based system that's just forcing your folks to spend time aggregating data instead of analyzing it. So there's an opportunity cost there, pulling people away from the real value-add activities. And so you end up working, these inefficiencies, I think, drive to, work that's repetitive or even remediations that just move people away from their primary work that would really add value to the corporation.
Yeah, and I can only add to that. This is Bill. The real value that we do as organizations is not collecting data, but analyzing it and doing something with it. And so that's really what we need to focus on.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I mean, one of the primary barriers that we see is the interchangeability of compliance and quality, and really focusing and looking at quality as an investment where compliance is a cost. It is a cost of doing business in this market and in many other markets, but compliance does add very little value. In my opinion, compliance needs to be the byproduct of a well-designed and executed process. Is the documented evidence that you did the right things. And quality is doing the right things. So that is critically important as we look at what are the barriers to quality improvement.
Yeah, if you go back to the McKinsey study that the FDA initiated that created the case for quality, the outcome was really that they determined that while compliance was improving, complaint rates were not, and so there was a direct connection or a correlation between compliance and quality, and they found that was not connected, and so that sort of was the whole impetus.
Yep. Great.
Okay, we do have another question coming in. For those of you who haven't had a chance to submit one yet, you can select the Q&A button. A text box will appear, and we will answer it. Hopefully, we're running short on time here. The next question is, do people within your company or within industry believe in the FDA's case for quality? Is there any skepticism?
So to me, that's a really good question. I think that when you look at the way the FDA and industry has interacted for many years, and many decades, to be honest with you, it's always been the FDA is an authoritative organization. I always like to use the term, they carry guns and badges, and they have the off switch. They can turn your company off at any moment with a consent decree. So when the FDA walks in and says, we're from the government and we're here to help you, is that met with skepticism? Of course it is. The question is how do we get past that? How do we get people to believe in the fact that the FDA is really trying to solve the problem of connecting compliance and quality as a positive correlation, and that's something that is going to it will happen when there is successes and stories that can be related to back to the industry.
That's a great point. Ugo, what do you think?
Yeah, and what I would add, certainly the skepticism is present, right? it's a change in the relationship, and so change in and of itself brings some skepticism by a portion of the people experiencing always. But I also think, and we shouldn't miss that there's a recognition that there's value in having, the framework under which FDA looks at these things, right? The metrics that they consider important, being shared with the industry and put in one place. I do think that, not only that case for quality, but if you look at some of the more recent guidances, there's a definite effort by FDA to be more transparent about how they make these decisions. I'm thinking of guidances like the they call actually benefit risk analysis, right? They're laying out a lot of the internal processes and sharing them in hopes that they get better understanding as to how things are done and what they see as drivers of values and impact to patients, so that people can align around those and help improve, the quality of the products and services we provide to patients.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if I can add, when we've been participating in Case for Quality for a number of years, and what you can see is the commitment from the agency, from Dr. Shuren through his staff, and they're really honest and open about the willingness to change, and the recognition that there have been some pretty challenging unintended consequences in the way FDA has regulated industry. And you really see in these meetings how the top brass within the agency and executives within the industry are really discussing these issues in a very constructive and open way, and I think that is going to lead to a change. To add to what Hugo said as far as risk, one of the other things we've seen in working with the agency is they're changing from a risk-based approach to what the term they're now using is a benefit risk approach, recognizing that nothing is perfect. We're humans, and we cannot make perfect things. However, what we need to look at is what's the benefit of this particular device compared to the risk of this device, and that not all devices are created equal, and that not all patients are going through the same issues and challenges. So this is really changing the perspective, and data and metrics are going to have a key impact in improving the quality of devices and hopefully streamlining the regulatory process.
Great point. Thank you, Dan. So in a few days, you will receive a PDF copy of this presentation, as well as a link to the webinar archive from MedTech Intelligence. I'd like to go ahead and thank all of the webinar attendees today, as well as Bill, Hugo, and Dan for their time. This concludes today's webinar on navigating the complexities of change and configuration management in the MedTech industry.